work together to address these issues. And in that vein, so we are working this on kind of every level. We're saying let's build the capacity, and we have 2 projects that are going forward right now, 2 demonstration projects that we're pushing for. One of them is co-management of game in the Otna region, and I'll show you my finger map here. This is Alaska, and down here we have Southeast. Over here, the Aleutian chain. All of this is, like you can think the top of the country to the bottom of the country. That's how much land we're dealing with here. Otna is right in here along the Copper River. They are the only one of our 12 ANCSA regions that is completely accessible by road. And that raises a problem, because then you have urban or even rural Alaskans. Anyone can come in and hunt on those lands with the permit. And so there's significant over-harvesting that happens. And what we're saying, again, is through legislation, there is legislation that should be introduced. There will be a hearing, I think, within the next couple weeks. Last I heard is March 12th, on having the Otna region, the Otna people, start a co-management system. And another demonstration project is for Intertribal Fish Commission on the Yukon-Kuskokwim rivers. So I think many of you would be much more familiar with fish commissions than I, it's something that we're saying, let us try it. Set up a demonstration project. This isn't going to be a massive drain on financial resources, but it will provide, the output, the amount that we get back is going to be so much more than what is getting put in. So I will say, now, once these pieces of legislation do come out, we would love to have support from all across Indian country, saying this is our way of life, and also help us build our capacity, help us build up what our knowledge. We have, like I think we were talking about earlier today, students who are going into school, give them a purpose to come back. You want to, work in natural resources, you want to be a fisherman? Okay, be a fisherman, be a biologist too. Get out there and do the counts and do the monitoring. Let's do it from within. So I think a lot of this is kind of preaching to the choir, but it's kind of nice to preach to the choir every once in a while, It's uplifting. And I see a lot of nodding, which is really great, because you go into a lot of these meetings in DC and they're like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, all right, we thought about that, but we're still moving forward. So I think those are the broad strokes, and I don't know, there's a lot that I could go into, and I could probably stand up here and talk for quite a while, but I will just say, moving forward, we definitely need the support of everyone, because a lot of the times the pushback that we get is, this is an Alaska-specific issue, it's not going to move. But if we had the support from across Indian country, we would be able to say, well, this is, Alaska is unique, Alaska does have its own challenges, but we have the support from all over the place. We see this work in other places, so why not try it here too? And just kind of FYI, the model that we're using for the Otna co-management of game is based on some very successful programs in Montana. So I'm going to stop, and I thank you very much for your attention. Mahalo. And if you have any questions, please let me know, or ask John, because I think he'll have quite a bit more information, very legal specific information also. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora. Alaska is beautiful, and as she mentioned, their collective land base is over 44 million acres. But I appreciate the patience of the people here funding and what have you. There's just a lot of pieces. I got to thinking that with this congressional midterm election cycle, nothing's going to get done other than what they kind of have to get done. You look at Patricia, she knows the calendar in terms of the work they have to do in terms of any appropriation bills and they start their recesses and campaigns are going on and they take their month off in August. And you start to be able to just count the days down that something could happen. Come back next year, I guess they'll reorganize the Congress in December. And we'll see how that shakes out, whatever party is going to be in control of other house, whichever house. You move into January, and have new Congress starts and everything, so it might be worthwhile to think about, I don't know, doing something in February, because it'd take a lot of work to do it, and to find the people that have the interest and the time to be able to organize it, because even organizing this little effort here, there's much more to it than you realize, and then you want to bounce it off. Does this make any sense? You know, and but here we are. So I look forward, to some discussion here before we, conclude this this roundtable to get some ideas, some feedback, some ideas or suggestions. But having said that, there are two people that we're wanting to call in from Hawaii here, Joby and Kavika, because obviously they're dealing with homelands and governance, and they certainly would just like to briefly share where they're at with those two areas. Because it's just like us, I mean, they have a lot of other issues to deal with too, and obviously having to deal with the state of Hawaii. So at this time, Joby.
Hello, my kako, Jovi Masagatani, and the Hawaiians come in and we move the furniture. But since this is our homeland, I guess maybe we can. So,
You can dance for us.
So, we just have a really short presentation, I guess, and we thought it'd be good to have some pictures to kind of show where the homelands come from. And it's if it's something that you're familiar with, my apologies, but we wanted to start from a place where maybe you didn't know about the homelands, because I know for myself I'm learning a lot about Indian country. And for myself, I actually, my father is Japanese, my mother is Hawaiian. I get my Hawaiian from my mother's side, and she is the youngest daughter of she is the youngest daughter. My mother, Ernesta Collins Masagatani, is the youngest daughter of Lewis and Leigh Collins. So my family hails primarily from the Big Island. My role is a little different from all of you in that the kuleana that's been given to me or my responsibility, I had the opportunity and privilege of being appointed to my position. But as a Hawaiian, I come from this aina. I'm held accountable for this. The decisions that I make, not only by my family that are living, my mom's sisters and their brother who hear about whatever, but also my great-grandmother was actually one of the earliest homesteaders in Molokai. So that kuleana in terms of the decisions and the management of this trust stayed with me. So this is yeah. So things always are challenging for me technologically, so if I screw up, just bear with me. I don't know why. So this is, the gentleman in the middle is Prince Kuhio, who is Kuhio Kalaniano Ole, which stands for the Ali'i Without Measure. And he was the principal founder of our program when he was a delegate to Congress in 1920. And I will keep this short because my mom and dad who I live with, my mom basically told me this morning, after 10 minutes, they're not going to pay attention anyway, so get it done in 10 minutes. So, here we go. The genesis of our program, not unlike so many of our indigenous peoples, this is the history of our people. Before contact, there are estimates as high as 800,000. By the time the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act was passed by Congress in 1920, we were down to maybe 40,000. less than 20% of our population of Hawaiians. This increase here really is a lot of our part Hawaiian population. And this jump right here really has to do with the way Hawaiians were defined by the census. We benefited from the opportunity of your ability to designate more than one race on the census documentation, and our numbers nearly doubled, because our tradition has been to identify not only our ethnicity as a Hawaiian, but all of our cultures when we speak about where we come from. Seeing that in terms of where our people were, Kuhio saw that the best way to rehabilitate our people was to return us to the land. And so the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, which he worked on passing without having a vote in Congress, which is phenomenal, came to be. So this is the bad news. In 1921, it's bad, but then it gets to be good. You know, in 1921, the lands that were available for Hawaiian homelands were certain tracts of public lands, and Patricia talked about the concept of the ahupua'a, and this is kind of the graphic that's used in our classrooms of the ahupua'a extending from the mountain to the ocean. So just to give you an idea, you know, there were the certain tracts of public lands, minus the forest lands, minus the sugarcane lands, which were the best lands to cultivate at the time, and minus lands that were already leased or in some kind of homesteading. And so what you were left with, were the homelands. At one point in time, these lands were the most remote, the most difficult to develop because of infrastructure issues. And when you look at this graph, it looks like somebody sneezed, but all of the green, 200,000 plus acres are the homelands. Some of the lands, the bigger areas, Ka'u, which is South Point, Pumu'ula. Some of these smaller areas, like Panaeva and Keaukaha, is actually where our larger homestead communities are. This large area is Kahikinui. This area here, Waiahuli, a lot of Moloka'i. Out here, our biggest homestead on the island, Nanakuli, over 800 homesteads. This side of the island, which a lot of people desire, Waimanalo, it looks like we have a lot of land, but what we have are the tops of the mountainside, the very tops of the mountainside. And then that big green spot out there is Kekaha, Waimea. We have one homesteader right now, but it's become a very attractive area to do hydroelectricity projects. And on the other side, the top part, Anahola, Kamalamono'o. So we have lands all across the state, some that came in 1921, and some that came in subsequently when we reached our land settlement claims with the state. It sounds sort of weird because we're a state agency, but we have resolved outstanding land claims issues with the state over the 1990s that brought another 16,000 plus acres into our land, in some locations very, very attractive to develop. As with maybe some of your lands, the remote locations have made them attractive to alternative energy providers, hydroelectric, solar, wind, and it's a totally different discussion now, being as the chair, than it was 15 years ago when I had the opportunity to serve as the deputy to the chair, and alternative energy was not something that was discussed at all, pardon me. So this is a picture of kind of our, what our developments look like. This is a very recent groundbreaking up in Lalamilo, which is in Waimea on the Big Island. And I did want to kind of note, when I was looking at this picture, I call this the Vanna White part of my job when I have to go with the OO stick. But what I did want to note is that this gentleman, who's the mayor of the Big Island, the county of Hawaii, is actually a Native Hawaiian. Malama Solomon, of course, who is a senator from that district, a Native Hawaiian. This woman here, she heads up, she is the trustee of Kamehameha Schools, one of the largest Hawaiian trusts, again a Native Hawaiian, and also chief counsel to a utility that was able to leverage resources from the federal government called San Rafael Communication, and brought in over $100 million worth of infrastructure onto the homelands, which would have never been possible. So I mean, that innovation and just seeing that picture, of course, my commissioners here, Kama Hopkins and Leimana Damate, who sit on the commission, also Native Hawaiian. So You know, we do have Native Hawaiians in leadership positions in the state. We don't always get along. We try to, my personal preference is to keep those issues at home, but especially when we're dealing with Native issues at a national level. This project down here actually is kapolei, what people kind of, you know, think about when they think about the most recent developments on the homelands. This is our office here. We're going to build one of the largest regional shopping centers across the street. We hope to break ground on that first one in about 30 years. And our homesteads here look like what you would see in planned communities, about 7,000 square feet, house lots and homes that go on that. Our homes are about $250,000 for a home that would cost you about $600,000 to $700,000 fee in this community. But that's still too expensive, we know, for many of our families, and which is always the ongoing challenge. So this kind of gives you a picture of you know, what the homes look like. I put this family because this woman here, Lynn DeCoy, and her husband, Russell DeCoy, are third-generation sweet potato farmers on the homelands. They do some tremendous amount of sweet potatoes, so we do some ag, but not enough. And she represents, you know, along with this Waimea Homestead Farmers, we have about 55 homestead associations that we work with on the homelands. They speak for themselves, you don't speak for them. In some communities they're more organized than in other communities, and they are very, very engaged with the issues that have to do with the homelands. And that's been a growth and a change, I think, over the last 15 years from where it was before. Sometimes it gets contentious, I'll be honest, but it's a positive thing all in all. So in summary, in terms of our program, it started as a federal program in 1921. It provided for homesteading for Native Hawaiians defined as 50% Hawaiian blood or more. That condition was a condition of Congress, a negotiated settlement, not something that the Prince wanted, and has been a source of challenges for our community because that's not culturally how we operate. We don't culturally operate that you're a small N Native Hawaiian and a beneficiary, and your cousin who's not, you know, the way we operate is you're ohana, you're one family, and our cultural background is to be inclusive and not exclusive. But nevertheless, this is the reality that we deal with, that the beneficiaries of our program are 50% Native Hawaiian blood or more, and their eligible successors, which are children, grandchildren, spouses, that are 25%. The land and assets cannot be sold, you know, are inalienable. A bank can't hold an interest, cannot foreclose. And this program was administered by the federal government until 1959, and then as a condition of statehood, transferred the responsibility to the state of Hawaii to manage it, and also the requirement that it become part of our Constitution. So Article 12 of our Constitution requires that the legislature provide sufficient sums for our program, for our operations, our development, our programs, our loan programs, and our rehab programs. But when we talk about this at the legislature, you get those glazed looks, like people don't know what you're talking about, especially in the more recent ledge. I mean, our experience with our state has been actually quite positive in trying to reach resolution of our issues as a Native people. But that is changing as the demographics of Hawaii change, in my personal opinion. We have, as I mentioned, 204,000 acres, 9,849 homestead leases. So almost 10,000 homestead leases, and those represent families. For every one that we have on the land, we have 2.5 waiting for an opportunity to get on the land. Both and those represent individuals. One individual can hold more than one application. They can hold a residential application and an agricultural application. So we have over 40,000 applications, individuals that are waiting to get on the homelands. We generate resources from our homelands. About 725 general leases and licenses generates $14 million a year. But we can spend easily, you know, if we have monies, consistent monies to spend, and I won't get into the settlement issues locally, but we can spend anywhere from 30 to 50 million, with no problem, because the cost of development in this town, is a challenge. So I just want to spend just a couple minutes on our federal issues. And the first thing I wanted to do was just to thank Indian country and all of the Indian leaders, as well as the Alaska Federation of Natives and the Alaskans, for the support that they showed to the Native Hawaiians when the early discussions about federal recognition happened. I was there. I was the deputy, and it was a particular time in history that I hope will come again. And it certainly made me feel very humble that the other indigenous peoples of this country stood shoulder to shoulder with us to help us with an issue that they really had no skin in the game in. And, you know, if we didn't have that support, those early discussions of federal recognition would not have resonated. They would not have happened. And so I just want to thank you as a Native Hawaiian for that, for your willingness to do that for us at a time really where you had nothing to gain to do so. And, you know, at that time, which is the early 2000s, you know, it was the Clinton administration. We had the Apology Bill in Apology Act, as we were just talking about this, Patricia and I. Patricia was working for the senator, and the Apology Act talked about reconciliation, and I think yesterday Moses had quoted from that act. It apologized to the Native Hawaiians for the federal government's participation in what happened, and there was a call for reconciliation. And Mark Van Norman and John Berry came out here from DOI and DOJ and did a series of hearings and recommended federal recognition. And at that time, I didn't know what federal recognition was. I had to learn about what that was. At the same time, these trusts, our trust, the Hawaiian Homelands Trust, was under the first that had ever happened of threats, lawsuits against our program based on the 14th Amendment, which is unconstitutional based on race. And you talk about fear. You know, people came to meetings because the possibility that they were going to lose their homestead, which had been in their family for 3 generations. We're talking standing room only. Hundreds of people were showing up that usually don't come out for any of our meetings. You know, and in that context, federal recognition became an opportunity to strengthen our cases in the courts. So it started first in terms of, you know, the federal policy of recognition and how important that was to shoring up our position in the courts, because our arguments are basically the same as yours, except it's like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And we look at you as the one-eyed man because you've got the recognition, whereas we don't. And so our arguments have to be made, you know, that much harder to make because we don't have that acknowledgement that all of you have. So the exposure of our program, and we've, you know, there were the Barrett and Carroll cases, there was a Corboy case, attacking this public trust as well as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and they have their own set of cases. Those cases we won on technicalities. It's just a matter of time before the case comes at the heart of the issue, which is whether or not our program is unconstitutional because it's race-based. And, you know, I have no one to blame but ourselves for a lost opportunity, because there was an opportunity, you know, a moment in time in which the House was Democratic, the Senate was Democratic, we had the lead senators in terms of seniority. The president was from Hawaii. Could you ask for a better alignment of stars? And we weren't able to get federal recognition done because of issues that we as Hawaiians brought forward. So, you know, that moment is gone. It may never come again. And, but like all of you, we you know, we're in this battle for life. You know, I was married to someone who's Japanese who wanted to be Hawaiian, and he has Hawaiian children. And my son, we talked about this, and they said, you know, a lot of people come to Hawaii and they want to be Hawaiian. They want the Hawaiian name, and sometimes it's really good because some of our best champions are non-Hawaiians. Senator Inouye is one, Governor Abercrombie is another. But there's a burden that we carry as Native peoples that it's so hard to explain, a kuleana and a responsibility that you just carry to your core. And there are times when you just feel like, why is this even my issue? But that's just part of who we are. You're just born with it, and you carry it because you have that responsibility to your ohana, to your family, to your people, to make it a better place. So, you know, I really just want to mahalo those of you who were there and those of you who came after. And also, you know, I was there when the senator said that we're not going after Indian money. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm in this position at Hawaiian Homelands, we're not going after Indian money as it has to do with Nahasda reauthorization. That's a commitment that our people made to your people, and we're going to follow through on that. So our Nahasda resources that we have control, you know, that we have a say in, that's Hawaiian resources. Your resources are for Indian country, and your needs are important and just as great. So I feel that that was a commitment that was made at the time. I remember that commitment, and as long as I'm in a position to make sure that commitment is fulfilled, I will fulfill that commitment to those of you around the table. Which gets me to the last point in terms of where we are with federal recognition. My focus is the policy, because when you get into the implementation, it gets very messy very quickly. Bottom line to me, because the homelands are for a particular section of our people, the implementation issues are reliant on our beneficiaries. And the last thing, you know, I'd like to leave with like tangible like asks, because in the same way I was thinking about all of these, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do? And just a couple of things. You know, we meet with our congressional delegation every time they go up and make time for us. I'm sure they make time for you guys. And we can take the one or two issues that are important to your people, whether it's the carcieri or, and I'm learning about that. I don't know what that issue is, but you can give me the one, you know, educate me, and I can talk to, you know, Congressman Hanabusa, who's passionate about the homelands, by the way, you know, Senator Schatz, Tulsi Gabbard, who's learning about Hawaiian homelands, etc. In the same way, what we would ask of you is, with reauthorization as it relates to Nahasda, you know, Title 8 is about Hawaiians. We would just ask that you say, hey, you know, they're okay. We hope to come along with Titles 1 through 7. Because if we get cut off, we're dead in the water, and we won't get reauthorized. And, you know, the last thing is how I think we make our case if they don't understand our Native issues, because again, the psyche of a culture is based, the American culture is based on the people who left their homelands. That's our whole culture, is the people who immigrated to the United States. So when you talk about Native issues, it doesn't resonate at a base level. But there may be other areas in which it resonates. And I think about the young man I dated in graduate school who was a white man from Mississippi, but could relate to my issues because he came from someplace. You know, he knew where he came from. And a lot of people like who I met in Chicago and New York, you know, you'd say, I'm gonna go home, and they'd go, well, home's where you hang your hat. You know, they didn't know, they couldn't understand what I was talking about. So our issues aren't only about Native issues, they're rural issues. You know, they're issues about, in our case, we're big, huge union state. Most of these jobs are union jobs. A lot of them are filled by Native Hawaiians. They're union issues. You know, our housing issues are about making it affordable to live in a community where it's and which I think like Montana and other areas maybe can understand, where you get sort of frustrated that people move in with a lot of money and then they make it unaffordable for you to live there. Those issues resonate with a lot of people. Those are our issues as well. Nahasda or whatever is about local people trying to make a local living where they're from. So I guess I say that because sometimes these other issues resonate with people who really can be friends and are just not familiar with, you know, what we're dealing with. And with that, I probably ran over my 10 minutes, but I want to mahalo all of you for your attention, and I will give it to Joey.
Thank you, Joey. We have one more perspective before we have a little bit of a dialogue about ideas or what people think of this particular meeting or thoughts about what could be done. And Kabika Riley, he's with OHA and will comment on their efforts regarding recognition of Native Hawaiian sovereignty.
Thank you very much, Nick. Aloha mai kako. Aloha to all of you. It's really humbling to go after Joby and to be here in the room sharing a few remarks with all of you. I also understand that I'm positioned in, I think, what is the most dangerous placement for a speaker at a conference, and that is right before a meal. So the last thing that I want to do is to stand in the way of the lunch that we have prepared for too long. I think actually, in my view, when I was thinking about what I wanted to share, Joby already said what I thought was the most important thing for someone from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to share, and that is to mahalo all of you who stood with us and continue to stand with us as we fight for our issues. So again, mahalo for that. And if there's an ask that we can make, it's to ask that you continue to stand with us. And that's so important to us. I think the other thing that's important just in a few minutes is, as a communicator, I think it's important that we never take for granted that everybody in the room knows who you are, knows what your organization is, knows where you're coming from. So perhaps the best thing to do would be just to share a little bit about the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. My position is Chief Advocate. A lot of organizations have different, they call it C-suite titles, right? You have your CFO who handles finance, you have your CEO, my boss. OHA is different, especially as a state organization, because when we were created, and people will tell you that we were created through our state's constitution, that's correct. That we were created through a constitutional convention, that's correct. And that we were created because a majority of the voters of Hawaii approved of the creation of an office that is dedicated to serving the state's first people. That's also correct. But the origin of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, in my perspective, as a Hawaiian, as a student of history, really comes from the Native Hawaiian people themselves, from the political manifestation of the cultural resurgence that was going on in the 1970s. And there was fire, there was energy, there was passion, there was anger. There was a need for what Joby talked about, for reconciliation, what Moses talked about at that time, and there continues to be today. And one of the ways that our community fought to try to have a Hawaii solution to these Hawaii issues was through the creation of a independent state entity, an autonomous trust that would also be the outcome, and by the outcome I mean the people in charge would be chosen by our state's indigenous people, Native Hawaiians, would be from our state's indigenous people, Native Hawaiians. The Native Hawaiians would be the ones running for office. Native Hawaiians would be the ones choosing the candidates who would run the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The reality is, and Joby talked about the court cases, unfortunately, that option was taken away from us, and we are very lucky to still have trustees like Trustee Apoliona, our chairperson, Chair Machado, trustees who are by, of, and for the community. Because the concerning reality is that 4 out of 5 people who are eligible to vote for our trustees are not Native Hawaiian. They're not what we call our beneficiaries. So it's a frightening reality to try to look at that in the long term, the idea that the decision makers responsible for the Native Hawaiian Trust, at any time if there was a backlash, if there was a turning against us, 4 out of 5 folks who are eligible to make decisions about who my bosses are not from the community that my bosses and I are responsible for serving, for advocating for. And we were given that specific advocacy responsibility as a state agency because there was a recognition that just creating an Office of Hawaiian Affairs wasn't enough. Office of Hawaiian Affairs needed to advocate, to serve, to fight, to work on behalf of the Lahui, the nation, the Native Hawaiian people, in order to change the rest of the entire system, to address those injustices. So the topic of I do today as somebody who works at OHA to advance that? I often go back to the overlap and then sometimes the struggles between our mission as OHA and our vision. Our mission, and this is codified, is to work to improve the lives of Native Hawaiians. We fight to do that every single day. We fight at the state legislature oftentimes, right there with Joby and with Dre. My team at the state level is tracking, I was looking at it the other day, 760 different bills. It's unbelievable. We have a federal office that works on doing the same sort of thing, piece by piece, day by day, fighting to try to advance self-determination, fighting for things like a Native Hawaiian Public Service project at the federal level, so that when we go to Washington, D.C., we want it to be increasingly common that we're negotiating with ourselves on the opposite side of the table. Fighting here in Hawaii to pass good law, to stop bad law, and to see that good law is implemented in the way that it was intended to protect our people's rights. And there's so much to do just on that front, just in terms of advocacy, to try piece by piece to improve the lives of Native Hawaiians, that it becomes a struggle to look at our vision. So our mission is to improve the lives of Native Hawaiians. Our vision is Ho'ohulu'ahui Aloha, raise a beloved nation, to address these issues of nationhood for us, which have so many different challenges. I could speak all day about that. But, again, the most important thing Joby already did in terms of my thoughts, which was to thank you all for standing with us and to thank you for continuing to stand with us. Let us know if there's anything that we can do. We don't just want to ask, we also want to return the aloha that you've given to us. Look forward to talking with all of you, and with that, I will get out of the way of your lunch. Thank you, mahalo.
Thank you both, Joby and Kavika. I wanted to introduce Anani Apolina here. She's one of the trustees for OHA. Always had a mental block when I pronounced her last name, and she spelled it out for me phonetically and everything. I'd still mess it up. But she's a renowned singer here, and not only in the state, but she also performs here at the Hilton Hawaiian Village. Beautiful music, very the kind of the cultural stuff, not rock and roll and jazz and whatever. But as we work our way toward concluding, we're going to have some discussion, and there's going to be lunch again. And after lunch, your people will, I'm sure, have plans, what have you. Then want to certainly pick up on the invitation for dinner this evening to make sure that people that are going, one, have a ride. People need directions, but to get that kind of further coordinated and everything, so no one is left standing wondering how they get there if they're going to go. But it'll be a great evening. Now, I wanted to also, as we get close to end, I'd like to hear from some of the kind of closing observations from some of the younger people at the table in terms of the kind of next generation of leaders and everything. What they think about this session, what they think about could be done. Because it's really they're the ones that are rapidly becoming the ones who are driving the training. So, but let me just kind of throw it out. I mean, if you have any thoughts about things we've left out, or wanted to touch on, wanted to share, let's do that for a little bit here. And obviously, ideas about next steps. It's easy to come up with suggestions, harder to execute. Unless you have the resources, and especially the human resources. But there's a lot of experience, even, and tremendous accomplishments from some of the people around this table, are in the room. And so with that, I mean, is there anybody, I don't know, a lot of you have been very patient, and sometimes I always make the mistake of just loading the agenda up too much. I think all this stuff had to be said. I think we've all learned from it. So I don't know if there's a, Mark?
Yeah, I've sat here silent the last couple of days, and that's what I do. But what I've gathered from this, and I'm very happy that we took this opportunity to do this. But what I'm getting, what we need to take away from this is we've had good discussions, we've shared a lot of words, and, you know, I go to a lot of meetings and a lot of things like this, and when we leave, 9 times out of 10, we leave the words on the table. We need to pick those words up and take them with us and turn those words into actions. But in listening to everybody in this past couple of days, what's really striking me is unity. We need unity in Indian country. You know, with 566 tribes, 565, whatever it is, we're powerful. But we don't know that because we don't get together and work together to get these things done. You know, the question is, where do we go? Well, we go where the problem is, together. You know, I don't have a problem going back to DC and lobbying, walking the halls with aching feet and doing what we have to do. But a lot of times I get on the horse and I go and I look behind me, there's nobody riding with me. And I think that that's what we need to really be aware of, that we need to fight these things together. You know, I enjoyed listening to Billy Frank and the things that he experienced and the things that he did. And we need to get back to that. You know, and I heard Chairman Mazzetti say, you know, how we need to get back and leader to leader like the old days. We don't seem to be doing that anymore. You know, and that's how we're going to accomplish these things. We're going to accomplish them together, not apart or 1 or 2 leaders or 3 or 4 going to do these things. And when we look at our funding, yeah, we're discretionary funding, but we're allowing that because we don't go back to DC in numbers and fight that to get what is owed to us, you know, what they're supposed to be providing for us. I was back in DC one time, we were talking about funding, and one of the, you know, we were talking about the trust responsibility. One of the senators there said, well, we're fulfilling the trust responsibility. Aren't we giving you money? You know, and it's bigger than that. Yes, you're giving us money, but you're not giving us enough. When the prison systems in California have better health care than our Indian people, something is wrong. And like I said, you know, we need to unify. We need to really keep that in our minds. And not just unifying with our Indian people, with our Hawaiian brothers and sisters. You know, the island people, we need to all stand up together and work together, or we're going to continue to suffer what we're suffering. And this is what we need to teach the leaders coming up. You know, I'm young as far as a leader goes, not in age like Chairwoman Peck says. 62 years old, but, you know, I've only been a tribal leader for going on my 10th year. And so I have a lot to learn yet. But I'm learning every day because I pay attention. I sit in these things and I listen. And I listen to the older people, you know, that have been there and fought these battles. You know, and I take it to heart and I remember the words that they say. But like I said, we need to, when we leave, pick up the words and take them with us. Thank you.
Anybody else there? Something on your mind? I know I've had the good fortune of going down to the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. They kind of do an annual retreat. And Robert Smith, who's also the chair of that organization, I've always been impressed with what they do as an association and, you know, some of the activities. I mean, their digital village, you know, as Mark points out, I mean, the resources are there. When you look at, you know, the revenue generated by the Indian gaming business, you look at what the regional corporations, you know, generate in Alaska, the financial resources are there. It's just a matter of how you organize so that you can draw on the resources and draw on them and really produce. To me, it's always all about organizing, mobilizing, evaluating what you're doing, because if it isn't evaluated, say it was a bad idea, we didn't do it. But I think that even the time frames have to be shorter. You come together, you decide to do something, and 6 months later, we not made progress, probably starting to fizzle out. You know, and I know it's extremely hard, but with technology anymore, I mean, man, just what you can be on top of. I had mentioned to a couple of people when the Bay Mills case was argued, you know, first argument up on the 2nd of December there in the morning at 10 a.m. You know, by 1 hour, and that's it. You do the hour, next case. But so there's some very accomplished people, but I think it's around the table. But it's really like Mark said, how do you advance the ball into what, to where, and to who, and who takes on some of the responsibility. And I know there are a lot of regional organizations and NCI and others, and they're making efforts as well, and obviously have big agendas. But I don't know, Robert, you want to share anything about STCA? I mean, your thoughts. I mean, Paula, the tribe has done very well with their enterprises and everything.
Yeah, just on behalf of the 18 tribal governments in Southern California, I guess I kind of inherited the job. Leader was 50 years in the position before I got elected, and I've been around 24 years. So I mean, I'm always learning, but I think the 18 tribal governments down in Southern California, we work for, helping our people on the national level, the state level, and we work together. We don't get into gaming issues because 10 of us are in gaming, the south and the north, and we stay out of that arena. That's our own enterprise, but for the health and safety welfare of our tribal members, we work good. We have a good representation here. I think it was 10 tribes out of the 17, so I think moving forward dialogue, I'd like to see maybe we look at another, maybe a water summit or natural resources summit. Some of the same people and try to get more tribes in, as the leader across said, really doing the fishing, all that stuff. It affects all of us. So again, thanks for having the opportunity to participate. We look forward to doing something in a positive way. Thank you.
Yeah, that water meeting, I think people are interested, and I'd, I guess, expend some energy to try to make it a reality. But at the same time, I'm not saying those are the right topics or they're queued up the right way or what have you, but play on words, there's been a lot of water going under the bridge, and we need to get our grips around it a little better. I know John, I don't know if you want to offer any comments in that area, or any of you. I know John and I have done a lot of work in the water resource area, not only representing tribes. And you even notice in that little program with the Klamath had the right to make a call on the river because of fishing. And when they did, all hell broke loose. I mean, you structure the agreement, but as soon as you execute your right, people start screaming. And there was irrigation districts or whoever, so it just never ends. But John or anybody you want to any comments on that area or any area?
Sure. Yeah, on the part of the water rights area, so as Nick said, we've done a lot of work there. We're currently representing 5 tribes on some issues. And historically, I think we've been involved in 9 of the 28 settlements that have occurred since the early 80s. We have been working as a result of efforts by tribal leaders to establish relationships with Western states on these issues, working with the Western States Water Council, kind of coordinating the discussions about facilitating negotiated settlements, and we've been doing that for really about 30 years now, and that process continues. We have symposiums on water rights settlements, and what the latest developments are every 2 years. And when we have gotten together in those meetings in the last couple of years, there's always been talk by the tribal leaders and tribal attorneys that attend those meetings that it would be beneficial to kind of have our tribes only meeting on these issues, much the same as we used to when Dick used to have his meetings on these issues. And so I've encouraged Dick to think about putting together a meeting like this, and what he's outlined here I think is really good, because it really kind of brings all the different tribes and their issues, kind of the major areas of the country together to talk about these things. They're all in a way kind of different. At the same time, we're all faced with the common enemy, and in the end, it's always